Hello, it is Kate from Push. How are you all? I hope you're all well. I hope that life is treating you very well at the moment in what can only be described as particularly weird times. But I'm very pleased to be speaking to you, and moreover, I'm very pleased to be speaking to what I can only describe as one of our very favourite people, and that is Mr. Chevy Rough, who we have had the pleasure of working with now for, God, it must be about 3 years. And do you know what? I was trying to think. How did we first find each other? I think I'd heard about you through various sources. People had heard you speak, and they're like, "This is a man you need to know," and then met you, and I think we all just fell in love with you a little bit from the first instance. So without further ado, Chevy Rough, WellBeing Specialist, would you please do a much better intro than I ever could, talking about a little bit about what you do, how you do it, and why you do it?
God, it's always these moments, isn't it, where you just completely forget what you do and how you do what you do. This is the worst bit of any talk or any conversation that I ever have, is like, how do I summarize what I do? It's funny, I've spent years trying not to fit into a box, and I've spent ages kind of being challenged by a job title, and I finally came to Wellbeing Specialist. And when I talk about well-being, I talk about mental, physical, social, and environmental health. That's what I help people look at. But I don't really kind of think I'm a specialist, actually. I think I'm more of a well-being generalist. Mm-hmm. You know, I kind of look at, I look at the principles of well-being. I help people understand physiology before psychology. I help them understand stress and rest and energy. And then I look at kind of mindset, and then I start to look at behaviors and habits, and then the tools, right? You know, I look at things like breath and sleep and movement, and all these kind of stuff. So yeah, well-being generalist. Does that sound sexy? I don't know. That's what I'm going
for. It's not quite as sexy as well-being specialist, but I kind of get it. Is there a general specialist? There we go.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the thing. Like, there's so many. You know, it's not about well-being. Is not about one magic bullet, right? Like, it's like, how can you make 2 to 3% change this year, and how does that compound on year after year after year? When you're thinking about your health, you're not thinking about your health tomorrow. It's about, where am I going to be in a decade? Where am I going to be in 20 years? It's a long-term game.
And what I like about it as well is that, you know, actually there are so many specialists out there, but ultimately, you know, as you just very beautifully put, it's not about just getting one thing right. You know, we have to consider lots of different things, and moreover, finding our own way through all of those things.
Exactly.
And I get that feeling. That's what you do. And before we go on to, I want to talk a lot about yours and my favourite subject, energy, and that's what we are going to be talking about throughout this. Would you just share, though, because this is one of the things that really made us fall in love with you, was your story of how you got into it in the first place? Because life used to be pretty darn different for you, right?
Yeah, so very quick summary. I won't go into the half-hour talk, but no, it's I'm 30. I'm 38. I turn 39 next week. And I 20 years ago, I entered into the city, into the square mile 20 years ago. I kind of stumbled into financial services, stuffing envelopes for an investment bank. As I always say, I'm pretty sure I was responsible for the credit crunch. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, massively dyslexic. There's a reason I left school. But for me, my big story was, I suppose, that I always struggled to fit in. I struggled around men. I had abandonment issues from kind of being brought up myself and my dad leaving me. So I got superhero powers through alcohol and cocaine. And I had kind of quite serious addiction issues for well over 12 years, 13 years. And then I started to make change when I turned to 30, and have just been kind of on that continuous journey ever since. And I suppose that change led me to 4 years ago wanting to help other people, you know, and I retrained as a coach, and the rest is history. I did a documentary 2 years ago on BBC One where I took 10 people with mental health conditions to the London Marathon, which was fantastic. You know, I had a breakdown a year and a half ago again.
Ironically, when you were doing the thing that you love, right, but overwhelming still.
Well, dude, I always say it's really funny. So I'd gone from drug addict, like the reprobate in everyone's life. Everyone was like, Chevy could be good, but do you know what I mean? Like, or we need a good night out, let's call Chev, you know? But it was always that. And I went from I went from kind of drug addict, failure, never being kind of valuing myself much. I went from that to being on BBC One within 2 years.
Yeah.
So my rate of acceleration, I mean, and it was an award-winning documentary. The royal family were involved. Nick Knowles was presenting. It was a big, big thing out there at the time, Mind Over Marathon. And
so almost
on the airing of the second episode, when the world was telling me how proud they were of me, I was taking my first antidepressant.
Wow.
You know, it was great. And I was 3 months off of marrying my beautiful wife. So I had built this life that I had been striving for. I had finally done it. I'd made my mum proud. I got to be able to go like that to everyone who thought I couldn't do it, which was important to me at the time, you know. And I took my first antidepressant, and that was ultimately down to chronic stress, you know. And don't get me wrong, I had to have, and it kind of leads into what I do now, I still had to go and have some conversations about some stuff that I had locked away. But it made no logical sense to me, because I was like, I'm about to marry my wife. I've built the perfect life and career. Why am I feeling so low? Why am I feeling so tired all the time? Why can't I focus on anything? Why do I feel exhausted? And for me, I just figured out that I'd been living in first gear for so many years. You know?
Look, I mean, this perfectly
there you
brings
go. You're welcome.
Yeah, the gift of the handover.
Yeah.
This does perfectly bring us into then the subject of the topic, and I'm pretty obsessed with energy myself, because I realise actually that the at the heart of everything for me, if not for everyone, right? When I perform at my best, it's when my energy is highest. And what I mean by perform is I mean feel, as well as obviously the delivery, right? And something about, and this obviously was based from one of the workshops of yours, something around this heading for me just stuck the hell out, because you know, because it's so blooming true, you know, this whole thing. How do we unlock energy, focus, and critical thinking is the subject of your session. And because I think that, you know, and I talk a lot about this, and there's a talk that I do about how I believe that the problem that we're facing is that we are in, as I'm deeming it, a bit of a personal energy crisis.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that we have all of this stuff that we have to do, and we are constantly wanting more and more and more. And not only can our brains not quite cope with it, but the point being is that we don't have an infinite amount of energy to deal with the infinite amount of stuff that is coming up. And we believe if we do more, i.e. expend more hours, then we are going to be able to deliver more. And that just ain't true. And actually, you know, as you so perfectly put it, we need to rethink this. It's not about just doing more. It's about how we do it. Talk to me about it. Talk to me about
Time is not the metric to success. Energy and focus is. You know, and that's a big philosophy that I work on whenever working with anyone within my camp. Is we really feel that, you know, if we just do more, then we'll get more results out.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right to take a step back just before we move forward, which is, I always say, like, my vision. What's my vision? My vision is always starts with a question, which is, if I could refund you back 10% of the energy that you spend in an average day, how would you use it? You know, and what I love about that question is it levels the mental and physical diversity of the room. Because if you're someone who is really challenged, or if you're someone who's full of energy, we would always want 10% more. We would always have something to spend it on. And what's the answer to that? People want to spend it on going to the gym, starting a hobby, repicking up an old hobby, spending it with family and friends. You know, whatever it may be. We understand this correlation between energy and being able to navigate through life, and the importance of it. And I think it's really important that we frame energy for people, because one of the challenges that we've got around the word energy is cultural kind of, we all think about things differently. What stress means to you, it means different to me. What energy means to you is different to someone else watching this. And energy, people can feel is very woo-woo, you know? Like, you've just got to think of your energy. And then they suddenly hear the chanting in the background and the incense candles being turned on. What we've got to understand is that we as human beings consume calories, we take in oxygen, and for every task that we complete, or we try to complete, or we engage with, we consume energy, we convert energy to do that. You know, one of my favorite favorite stats, my favorite two stats is 20% of the calories that we consume go to our brain and our nervous system. You know, chess masters can sit there and go through 6,000 calories in an average tournament.
Yeah.
They don't move.
No.
So this is where we got to start thinking that energy is important for critical and strategic thinking. Energy is important for being able to keep our emotions in check.
Yeah.
Energy is important for us to be able to have focus, willpower, and self-control. Yeah. Right? And the more that we deplete it throughout the day, because we don't have an unlimited resource, the more that we lose access to these tools that help us navigate life, you know?
So, okay, so let's dig into this a little bit, right? Because for me, you know, we're still thinking about the expending of it. And yep. I suppose, you know, we've highlighted there are different things that it's going to be going on, but how do we manage it better? And, you know, because it's not just about expending more, you know, how do we manage our energy better? Because at the moment, I think that we are in the kind of space of, you know, when I talk to a lot of clients about this, they're like, yeah, you know, I know how to. I'm like, no, I really genuinely don't think you do. I think you are treating yourself a bit like the computers that you use. You just plug in and keep going and going. We're not good at managing how we use our energy and consequently get really good at the output.
Yeah. And this is we talking before, which is people don't think about the power cord attached to the supercomputer, right? I think that's the important thing. And people are like, well, I've got energy, I can do this, I can do that. And, you know, I'm like, that's great. I could drive from here to Scotland in first gear in a car if I wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, it's possible to do that. But at what cost does it come at to the engine, to myself, to my sanity? And you know, the fact of the matter is that I could do that journey in fifth gear. And I can still get to the same destination and I can enjoy the journey. And I think that's what...
How do we get into fifth gear? How do we get
so for us, what we talk about is we have to start looking at how we close down. So we can do it. So we understand the importance of rest, right? And this is the kind of principles to well-being, is we have to understand this relationship between stress and rest, right? Yeah. So first of all, we have to very quickly, and forgive me for those who are watching, I have to be very black and white in this conversation. I really value that there's a lot of gray areas in this, and it's really important that if people think, oh, that doesn't sound right to me, they can always reach out afterwards and we can all have a conversation about this another time. But you've got to think about stress and rest, and you've got to think as stress as an investment. Whenever we are stressed, our body, the reason our heart rate changes, the reason our physiology changes, the reason our respiratory rate changes is because our body is trying to give us access to energy and resources to navigate the threat in front of us.
Yeah.
Right? When there is a stimulus in front of us, when we feel stressed, when we're stimulated by that, what's going on is our body is saying, hey, here is the energy and focus that you need to tackle that task in front of us, right? And we talked about this. Public speaking is a great example. When people are feeling really anxious and they can feel that tightness, we frame it as anxiety. But actually, hold on a sec. What if it isn't anxiety? What if it isn't a negative thing? What if it's your body just giving you the resources to do a good talk, to send blood to your brain so you can think more clearly and navigate the room? So we've kind of got to reimagine what stress is a little bit. And we've got to...
framing it, isn't it? Because a lot of the time we attach our emotional thoughts on it rather than actually the reality of what's happening within the functionality of our body.
Physiology, you know, every time something threatens us, our values or our well-being, we're stimulated, we have a stress response, right? Our stress response is our physiology shifts to be able to tackle the task in front of us. Fantastic. That is amazing, right? I want access to that resource to be able to navigate this conversation right now, right? To be able to conduct intense meetings, to phone my bank up right now and talk about financial problems that are going to be arising in my household. Right? I want access to that high gear. When Usain Bolt lines up to run 100 meters, he doesn't want to be zen. He wants that energy. He wants his body to be ticking over. Here's the thing. What we don't understand is how we shift from first to fifth, or even first, second, third, and fourth. It's not about one or the other. It's a dial that's very subtle, right? So it's how do we close down the stress cycle of whatever task we're engaging with, you know? So right now, I'm giving energy to this phone call, right? This is taking a lot for me to kind of navigate this. I'm worried about what people are thinking about what I'm saying. I'm thinking I'm an imposter, I'm a fraud, I don't deserve to be here. I hope Kate's happy with how good that I'm doing.
I can tell you, I'm giving you feedback, it's fine.
But this is what you understand as human beings. It's not, it's like so much. There's so much going on underneath the hood. And it's that critical thinking that's going on. Not only me trying to navigate the conversation, but the imposter syndrome, the negativity that I don't deserve to be doing. That's all happening.
Yeah.
Right? And that's consuming calories. That's burning through calories. That's using energy. And that's all fine because it's going to help me navigate this conversation. It's going to help me do the public talk speaking. It's going to help me deliver a workshop, or it's going to help me have a meeting. But what we then do is we jump straight from one energy demanding task into another. You know, and I'm going to, should we do the diagram? Should we see if we can do the diagram?
I can see you drawing the diagram. Look at that!
This is so bad. So this is where this is now kind of like budget. It's tough out there financially, guys. We're going budget right now, right? Budget coaching. So we've got to think about life as a stress cycle, right? Energy cycle is we start our day and we move around the cycle and then we go to sleep at night. That's how we close the energy cycle. That's how we close the stress cycle of the day.
So that's for the whole day, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's the whole day. And what we've got to think about is actually the day is full of loads of little tiny stress cycles.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that could be this phone call right now, this webinar right now. It could be going to the gym, right? Yeah. It could be going into a creative piece of work where you've got to sit there and focus on designing something, right? Yeah. Like just because you're a creative and you sit at your desk doesn't mean that you're not spending energy. Creativity comes at a cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So remember, chess champions, 6,000 calories just sitting at sitting at a table. Now, let's say the gym one, for example. We go into the gym, we train hard, we push ourselves. How do we close down the stress cycle of training? We do a cool down. We bring the system down. So we understand the value of that, right? We understand the importance of that. Why is that? Because that's where the body gets stronger, right? We don't get stronger on the run or when we're lifting the weights. We get stronger when we create the right optimal environment for our body to heal.
Right.
And that comes over the following days. That's why sleep is so important when you're training for a marathon or you do a lot of high intensity work, or hey, you work hard.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. So we understand the importance of rest now, right?
Yeah.
So why is it important that after this meeting, this conversation, that I close the stress cycle? Well, because I then get access to the cognitive skill menus to be able to process this, right? Instead of post-traumatic stress, post-traumatic growth. What did I do well on this call? What didn't I do well? What would I have done better next time? What am I grateful for? Shut up, you're not an imposter, you deserve to be here, Chev. It's okay, right?
Yeah.
Like and how will I do that? Because also, let's make me talking a lot now costs energy.
Of course.
I'm burning I'm burning sugars as opposed to fats because I'm talking out of my mouth. Like I'm going more anaerobic than aerobic. So my energy systems that I'm using internally are different, right? So I have to think about now going for a walk, closing the stress cycle down before I then engage with my next task. And that's what people don't do very well. I hope I'm explaining this clearly enough. That's what people don't well is we just stay in first gear throughout the day. Then we crash into fifth gear when we go to bed. The people who operate well, the people who are solid leaders that are always attentive, always focused, got good creative and strategic thinking, but more importantly, the people who can not only do that at work, but then turn up with the same level of energy for their loved ones at the end of a hard day, they're the guys and people who understand this ability to close down the stress cycle throughout the day, going for short walks, taking quick breaks, having a lunch break.
So it's the pulsing, isn't it? It's the kind of pulsing between different states. You know, so I really get that. So it's the kind of like, it's a burst of energy here, then a cool down, a burst of energy here, then a cool down, you know, and we talk a lot about this. We talk about the fact that actually what we're not very good at is doing that pulsing. As humans, we just keep going. So look, I want to bring that into the moment because I think at the moment, you know, whether we recognize it or not, a lot of us are basically going to be in a situation where we are more than likely going to be expending a lot of emotional energy. We're in such a heightened state at the moment because, as you and I were talking about earlier, all of this stuff that's coming in, all of the stuff that we're having to deal with that we've never had to deal with before, as well as the background noise of fear and anxiety and worry. So if we're in that state, what can we do about it? Like, what would you say are some good tips for helping people switch off a bit more or rest a bit more, going between those different states?
I think it's really important just to very, very quickly highlight, and I keep coming back to physiology and psychology and how the two very much correlate with each other, and it's one. I think in 20 years time, physiology will be psychology, if that makes sense. No, we separate the two, mind and body, but the two very much work together. I think it's really important for people to understand that when you're sitting there having a conversation with your family and you're trying to wear a mask and make out like everything's okay, but inside you're shitting yourself, right? That is utilizing willpower and self-control to keep your shit together. That uses energy. That's a muscle that tires the more that you use it, right? That's why, you say you're going to eat healthy throughout the day. Brilliant, fantastic. I'm going to do that. I'm going to eat healthy. And then you have a really stressful day. You're using a lot of willpower and self-control to keep your shit together. And then you stand there in Tesco's in the aisle and you can't make a decision. You're not a failure. It's just you've spent that muscle. It's tired. It's fatigued. Now, the reason that we reach for sugar or alcohol, which is basically sugar, is because that is a fast-acting fuel source, glucose. Our brain is looking for energy to replenish the reservoir. Right? So this is what I'm just trying to really help people understand that the brave face you have to wear at the moment, or the anxiety and the feelings and trying to keep your emotions in check and worrying about the future, that is going to deplete how you feel throughout the day. It is a muscle that ties. So let's just really understand that it's not just some emotional, psychological, wishy-washy thing, right? So let's first of all, there's that. So I think your original question, as always, I go off on a side and I come back again. Your original question was, how can we manage that? Was that right?
How do we switch off more so that
how do we switch off?
Rather than staying in that anxious place?
So first of all, there is no gold standard here, right? I think that's really important that we can set ourselves up to fail in the sense that I've got to switch off. I've got to create the perfect routine. I've got to work from this time to this time. I've got to put my phone down. The world is trying to get you to create 1,000,001 habits and do 1,000,001 things at the moment, right? Like, it's a lot of A/B testing. Some days are going to go well, some days aren't, right? And even if you are well versed in this, like, hey, me, I do this for a living. I practice this mindset and I practice these tools daily. Yet yesterday, my world crumbled, right? Yesterday, I just could not keep my shit together. And in this room, my anxiety, which has been at bay for a very long time now, came flooding back at me. So it's really important for people to understand that there is no gold standard here. Every day is an experiment. Every day is testing. And you will go 2 steps forward, 5 steps back, right?
What did you do in that moment, though, when it came up? And how did you manage that?
So I specialize a lot in performance breath work. Like, breath is a lot like... you've got people buy into slowing your heart rate down, right? Like, people buy that as a tool. Well, we can't actually slow our heart rate down. We can't speak directly to our heart. It's impossible. There's 2 ways that we can influence our heart and our nervous system, and that is breath and vision. Right? We can directly affect our internal physiology. We can shift ourselves away from fight, flight, and freeze to parasympathetic, rest and recovery. We can do this through breath. So breath is a very powerful tool for how we manage energy and how we manage our emotional feelings. We know that when people have panic attacks, their respiratory rate changes first before they feel panic or fear. So what if you got in the way of the breath? What if you change your respiratory rate? How would that change your emotion? Yesterday, I felt the breath change first. And I realized what was happening, and it was like the walls came down. So I literally jumped down, I sat against the wall there, and I just went straight into a breath piece. That was how I got ahead of it. That's my tool, and I've worked on that for a long, 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 long time.
Yeah.
So for other, you know, so that's kind of how I get ahead of things, is just what's my body saying,
yeah,
you know, and why is it kicking up a gear? Why am I feeling this tightness? What's happening? Okay, shit, I'm stressed right now. That's costing me energy. How can I deal with that? And then, does that make sense?
Yeah. So I suppose for me, there's your kind of, when I think about tools to use, and I want to give some really, really practical tools to people, right? I want to be sure that at the end of this, look, I think we've made it super clear that you have periods of real focus of energy, and then you need to go into a calmer state to then come back into the next stress cycle, right? So that's really, really clear for me. But I think also, you know, I want to share a couple of things. One, what is really valuable when you need to immediately manage your brain. And then the second thing, what do you do in those moments of downtime, in particular when we get to a place where we can't get out the house? So I think for me, and I know I talked to you about this earlier on, I shared 3 things previously on my Instagram, and tell me what you think of these. You know, when our brain, you know, the problem is at the moment, and I know you and I talked about this, one of the biggest things that we're having to deal with, yes, okay, there's influx of stuff coming in, but also as we are slowing down, we're having to deal with the stuff that's been kind of latent for ages and has been kicking around, as you so beautifully put it, all the stuff that's been in our email inbox, and we're suddenly having to deal with all of this stuff, and we're sitting in worry. And when that happens, what my biggest thing for people is how you get out of that worry and get into a more pragmatic and practical and realistic state. So for me, you know, I talked a lot about, right, if you're worrying about something in the future, number one, well, first of all, to distance yourself from it, right? Realize it is just a thought. It's not actually reality. The next bit about it, though, is if you are sat in that worry, is to actually start making a plan, right? So actually, if you're sat in it, then think about what you're actually going to do about it rather than just worrying. Next tip is either that, distract yourself, you know, anything from talking to a friend, you know, doing a puzzle, doing some work, whatever the thing might be. Or the final thing, and I know that you love this, just think the bloody opposite, right? If you're sat there worrying about what the worst is going to happen, think about the best that could happen, because either of them could fucking happen, right?
You could win the lottery. What if I told you was going to win the lottery next week? How would that make you feel? I'd feel quite good. Well, that is an equal reality to some of the other stuff that you're cascading in your head right now. Like, because, you know, the future is not here yet. We are only in the present, and it's, you know, who knows what's going to happen. And it's really important to think about, in equal measure to stuff going really bad, there is a positive thing, you know, future out there as well. You can choose which one to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for me is one of the most powerful things, you know, in particular when I think about unlocking the potential of mind, which I know is a really big thing for you, you know, unlocking our potential in our energy, of how we manage our energy better. But when I think about unlocking the potential of our minds, a lot of it is just switching our minds on, right?
Yeah.
The problem is we trust in our brains. And our brains are the things that are constantly flicking between, you know, lots of different stuff that just ain't necessarily true. And actually, you know, our mind is the thing that we can switch on to manage that and to think what we want to be thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Agreed.
The other point as well that I wanted to say, what in terms of practical stuff, you know, if we do have that bout of energy and that bout of focus, in the calmer, more reflective times, you know, at the moment, you know, we talked about this, the kind of the types of exercise or the getting out and having a walk. How do we manage that still if that walk isn't necessarily an option? What else is it we could be doing? Are we thinking about apps, for example, you know, mindfulness apps, anything for those moments of rest and recharge?
Yeah. Okay, so there's a few things. Let's try and sum up a load of actionables for people as best as possible, and a few different questions you've asked there. The first one, maintaining focus throughout the day, is something that you asked previously before, and I want to come back to that just in case that's something that people were talking about. There is so much around this out there on the World Wide Web at the moment that I don't want to bring too much noise. The thing that I would think about with people is, be aware that the further you go throughout the day, the more that you are going to, the less access that you are going to have to things like willpower and self-control, right? It gets very hard to stay focused the further you get into the day. So it's really important to think about loading your day in the right way, doing the challenging things earlier on in the day, the things that really need your attention, the things that you need to drill down into. And then the things that are more
routine, right?
Yeah. And the things that are more routine and habit-like towards the end of the day, put them in there, right? So that's number one. Number two within that is realize that actually a lot of us need bright lines. It's very hard to say, oh, you shouldn't look at your phone, right? You shouldn't check the news. Well, actually, you know, we're all creating this constant relationship, these dopamine hits, these cues of picking up our phones, jumping across to our email. And it might be easy to do that at the beginning of the day to keep that under control. But I think a lot of us know the further we go throughout the day, the harder it is to keep our shit together. So create bright lines, create friction between you and anything that is an unhealthy distraction, right? So if you've got to delete apps off your phone and change your password, do that. Put your phone in a separate room elsewhere. Delete your emails off of your desktop and have them just on your phone, because your phone is just going to be in another room somewhere, right? Start flipping this up now. You said no emails on your phone, but now maybe you need emails on your phone because you need to. Does that make sense? So it's really important that we can, if you're failing at trying to keep these kind of habits and these rituals alive, and you keep finding yourself going back to old habits, create friction. That's like the biggest thing that I can say. There's a whole workshop on this and a whole conversation, but friction is everything. Delete stuff, change passwords, put things in other phones. And the final one within that is definitely have one environment in your house that is a working environment, and that is it, right? Our body understands environment and cues. What happens when you walk into a church? You speak quietly. We demonstrate a behavior based on environment. So if you have a desk that's just for work in a certain chair in a certain location, your body will start to understand that's a place for work. Everywhere else is a place for home. That's that on that. That's my quick couple of tips. Does that make sense? Is that cool?
Of course it does. And do you know what? And there was one more thing that we when we were talking earlier that I'd really like to bring up, because I think it's a perfect way to really emphasize how we need to listen to ourselves more, and also about the impact that this not listening to yourself can have on your body. I said to you, what is the one thing that you do that you that keeps you at the top of your game? And you said it's about listening to yourself, because if you don't, then you drain your energy in not doing it. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so everyone's trying to tell people what they need to do right now and trying to give them a lot of help and advice, which is wonderful. I'm one of those people as well. Like, we're all trying to do that. There's no point teaching people any principles, any tools, any systems until they actually know what they need. Right? Like, what's our starting point right now? And for me, that's helping people understand to build a relationship with what I call their inside view. You know, we are constantly narrating what we need, but we don't often listen to it because we're too busy hearing the inside noise, right? Our inside view is saying, I should probably get up and go for a walk now. Our inside noise is saying, no, I've got to put hard work in, first in, last out. What if my boss emails me and I don't respond? I need to be here. I need to be on Slack all the time. I need to be present, right? This is the thing. Like, our inside view is constantly narrating what we need. If I told people, you know, put your hands up if you said you needed a holiday in the last 2 months, 80% of the room puts their hand up. Okay, what's your body telling you you need? Is it telling you need a holiday? Is it telling you you need to shift into a state of rest because your stress cycle has been open for so long? Right? Oh, I really need to go for a drink tonight. Yeah, maybe you do. There's nothing wrong with having a drink. There's nothing wrong with social connection. But if you keep telling yourself that every night, what is your inside view actually telling you? Is it actually saying that something isn't right and it needs to change and you need more rest in your life? Or, right? So we're constantly narrating what we need. It's about actioning it. And that's kind of when you said to me, what's the thing that I live by is, if I've got something ticking over in my head and I'm like, I need to jump on this call, I need to have a tough conversation. You know, I've been telling myself for a couple of days, I need to call the bank, but I've been ignoring it, right? But I know how much anxiety that's costing me. And for every loop that I don't close in my brain, that is costing energy.
That was, when you said that, that was just like an absolute light bulb moment for me. I was like, geez, the thing is, if I say to myself, I need to do this, or if I hear I need to do that, and then I don't do it, the amount of energy that I expend thinking about it, emotional energy I expend thinking about it and feeling bad and beating myself up about the fact I haven't done it is huge until I do it. And then I have that accomplishment afterwards when I have done it.
You're tiring that muscle down. You're tiring that willpower and that self-control, using it to ignore something.
Yeah.
In equal measure to getting something done, you've got to remember, like, you're spending energy either way. It's
Yeah.
up to you, right?
Yeah.
And that's why business, that's why when we work with heavy, like, leadership functions, CEOs, you know, if you look at the lifestyles of the presidents, whoever, good teams around them get them to the point where they don't do anything for themselves because they don't want them to make decisions, because they need to save, like a prime minister, a president, hopefully not, well, I don't want to use those two examples, but they've got to use, you know, their self-control and focus to be able to make the big decisions. Should I press the red button or not? And that's it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
And I think,
go on.
No, please.
No, I was going to say, that just makes so much sense to me, you know, that actually what we need to do, if we want to save our energy for the right stuff, one of the first things we need to do is just do what we said we would, right?
Listen to your inside view, avoid inside noise, and also avoid outside noise. Outside noise is culture, work first in, last out, work hard, go home, always on, right? Just do it. Yeah. If you're going to run or do exercise, you have to run 26.2 miles or run really fast to be successful, right? Outside noise gets in the way of inside view. So it's really important that we think about that and we action it and we learn to do that. The final thing, and people are saying, and this is really important, and I'm going to hammer this one very, very quickly home if that's okay, because it's the final tip that I always give. People want the magic bullet to well-being. There is no magic bullet, unfortunately. It's year-on-year practice. And it's about looking at a broad range of things: sleep, movement, nutrition. Not me, I'm not the nutritional guy. I'm not the financial well-being guy either. We've spoken about that. But, you know, it's looking at a broad range of things. But here is the magic bullet, is that we have to remember that our brains are social brains, right? We are designed to connect with other human beings. You know, our physiology matches the person in front of us. We mirror heart rates. We mirror respiratory rates. We release hormones when we're stressed. We don't just release adrenaline and cortisol, we release oxytocin, which is designed to bring us closer to other human beings. Like, hands up if you're stressed and you said you really need a hug from your mum. That's physiology starting to dictate your physiology starting to dictate your psychology. So it's really important that the actionable, guys, is, and I hope there's a few things in here, but talking is everything. Communication is everything.
I get it, and I have to stop this now because I've got to get on.
Yes, you've got to.
But I've got to go on another talk.
Go.
But look, I wanted to say thank you, and that is such a huge point to end on. You know, talking and connection is one of the most crucial things, and it's about us being human, right? And that is, I think, what's going to get us through this. I want to close. I want to say thank you to you. You've been amazing. Thank you for sharing and imparting your knowledge. We will be sharing lots of your sessions with our clients, because I know the stuff that you can be part of the next few weeks will be massive. Next week, I'm very excited. I'm going to be joined by an incredible lady called Kirsty Hulse, who's a very good pal of mine, and we'll be talking a lot about the power of confidence and how it's going to help us right now. Chevy, thank you. You've been awesome, and you have reinforced every thought we've ever had about how much we love you. And I will be speaking to you really soon.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Bye, best. Bye, bye, bye.